Number 10, friendly fire. Oh boy, this is just, I don't know, it's just silly. It's less WTF admittedly, and more just like, why though? So if you end up getting the Phaser Blaster, you can stun animatronics that are chasing you by shooting them in the eyes. This temporarily blinds them. That all makes sense to me. The other item you can get, the Phaz Camera, works in a similar way with its flash. Also, that makes sense. And yet, you can also use this to stun your friend Glamrock Freddy. Why would you ever want to do that? Why is that even possible? Why is that even an option? Just how sadistic is Gregory? These are all the questions I'm left to ask myself, and unfortunately you, who chose to watch this video, this shouldn't even be an option in the game, and yet hey, it is. You can do it. Just because Gregory is probably kind of partly a jerk all the time. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, make sure you show us that you love us and that you want more FNAF content by hitting that like. Number 9, traveling around in Glamrock Freddy. Why is this weird to me? I mean, it's cool, but why is it weird? Well, because it really doesn't seem like there is enough room inside Freddy for you as Gregory to fit. And I still stand by this observation today. I've honestly been saying it since the release of this game, when we got to see the chest cavity and also get a sense for, you know, our own size as Gregory in the game. It just doesn't add up to me. And the claustrophobic side of myself kind of feels like, as cool as it is to move around more safely in Freddy and also in essence pilot him, that is cool, I personally would never want to climb inside of his chest, no matter how small or how big it was. That just seems like, no thank you. And definitely not if it is things like Phaz Watch is also in there that I gotta share space with. That part where it appears that you get out still confuses me. Did the Phaz Watch only appear like after, like moving up inside Freddy from another part of him, like a limb or something? Or was it there the whole time? If it was there the whole time, there's really no room. It really doesn't make sense. Number 8, what's in the vent? One of the most actually terrifying moments comes from the Music Man who chases us in the vent. But also, I have some questions about this. Where did this Music Man come from? Why is he in the vent? Why is there a small and giant Music Man in this game? Is this little Music Man part of DJ Music Man's army? Like, does he have a bunch of them? That sounds horrifying. And still, why is he in the vent? The sequence where you are chased by the little Music Man through the vent feels somehow even more terrifying than being chased by a regular size animatronic, even though that should feel more threatening. And yet it also feels like a weird choice in terms of the narrative, but I guess in terms of creating a horrifying moment, the developers did succeed here, which is probably why Music Man is in the vent to begin with. But I don't know, maybe that's also his dressing room? After all, you know, the main stage animatronics all get dressing rooms, so I mean, do the other animatronics get dressing rooms? Do the wet floor signs, do they have a room they gotta go to? They should at least get like a green room or something where they can just like chill and hang out, or a break room, you know? Number 7, Mega DJ Music Man. I can't believe this really happened in the game. Also, if we're talking about animatronics getting their own dressing rooms, like DJ Music Man would need like such a big dressing room. He's such a big animatronic. A giant Music Man. That was real life in this game. I was so convinced when we got our first look at the trailer that Music Man, the giant Music Man that we saw, was going to be some kind of like delusional moment. Like, we'd simply imagine that Music Man was bigger than he was, we'd hallucinate it, and honestly, when I found out about the Sleepy Time candy, that honestly seemed even more plausible. I was like, oh boy, Sleepy Time candy, whoo! But no, giant DJ Music Man is a real thing, and apparently he is usually a super nice guy, according to Glamrock Freddy. Super nice guy. However, in the game, he doesn't seem so nice when he's chasing you and your heart is thumping and you're literally running for your life. Yeah, DJ Music Man from Security Breach is still something that will haunt my nightmares today. It honestly kind of makes me wish he was some kind of hallucination or dream sequence in the game. I don't know, that would be more easy to accept, other than like, that's real life. That's horrifying. Number 6, ending the game early. I think one of the weirdest things that's built into this game is the ending the game early option. Like, the fact that we get that option, that's weird to me. That's just, it's an interesting thing to build in, and I don't fully understand really why they did. Like, I get having multiple different endings, because that's cool, but giving you even the option to leave at 6 AM and just like end the game when there is so much more to do in this game, and the game would be so short if you just stopped playing entirely there. I don't know, why is that an option? Did they add it in because they wanted people to have an out if they were too scared? And the real question, did anyone actually like full stop playing there? Let me know if you did, because I bet some people did do that, and those people would have drastically missed out, or did drastically miss out. That's why I don't even think the option should be available for us in game. It just seems weird. Number 5, lack of Vanny. Vanny was a character that we all got excited for. She was at least alluded to in Help Wanted, and you know, that was a theory when it came to her involvement in this game. And we knew about Vanessa, and then through Special Delivery it was kind of hinted that Vanessa and Vanny may be one and the same, and that Vanessa was being manipulated or influenced by Afton into doing his bidding, revealing a darker side to her. This was also the theory for what would continue to happen in the game's Security Breach. And because of that, people thought that Vanessa and Vanny might be, you know, the main antagonist, or Vanny would be anyways, between those two personas. And even better, maybe this would actually be a villain we could actually save. Maybe we'd actually get a villain that gets redeemed. Oh my goodness. And then Security Breach came out, and Vanny didn't do very much. Even the Vanny specific ending that we get is honestly kind of disappointing. We don't even get a Vanny boss battle option really, at least not a playable one. Number 4, upgrading Glamrock Freddy. One of the most messed up things that you do in the game is definitely defeating Glamrock Freddy's friends and stealing their parts to upgrade him. Especially since you generally try to avoid talking to him about like where exactly you got the parts and how exactly that happened. And when you do mention it, you're kind of just like, oh yeah, that happened, don't worry about it. And when it does end up coming out sort of what did happen and where you got the parts, yeah, it's an awkward conversation to have. Glamrock Freddy also seems really hurt that you hurt his friends. Oh, and he's like, they're not in their right minds, they're just innocent victims. And then there is the whole weirdness of how detached Gregory seems to be in regards to his own emotions surrounding the destruction of these seemingly somewhat sentient animatronics. I mean, I feel like he's a little shocked, but he doesn't seem to be distraught at all. And I mean, I don't know if these animatronics, all of them, are specifically sentient, but based on our experiences with Glamrock Freddy, I think it's relatively safe for us to assume they are on some level, right? Number 3, demise of Roxy. I think one of the most messed up moments in this game is when you need to fight Roxy after you've in essence blinded her and like drastically messed her up. This really was the moment that made me question everything I thought I knew about this animatronic and her personality. Sure, Roxy seems self-centered and egotistical to begin with, but when you see just how devastated she is at the prospect of perhaps no longer being beautiful and being loved and accepted, oh man, that like hits you. It really shows you just how sad of a character this really is. It made me feel for Roxy, and it also made me feel horrible for everything being done to her. Like, I was thinking, dang, I don't want to see this animatronic hurt, but also that's how the game goes, so that's just like a thing that you have to have happen. You have to defeat her. You have to, in essence, kill her with fire. Or, you know, maybe not straight up kill her with fire, but at least stop her with fire. Number 2, it was Afton all along? The reveal that none of us were really hoping for, but I guess some part of us all was expecting to happen. I think the fact that William Afton was the villain behind Security Breach was not surprising, but at the same time, it was definitely something many of us were kind of hoping would not happen. Or I think even if you were like, oh, I want William Afton to come back, when it did happen, you were like, oh wait, maybe I never wanted that. Because like, why? I mean, William Afton is a horrifying villain, don't get me wrong, but he's also a very dead villain. A dead villain that we thought had been dead for a long time, and multiple times over. And yet here we are, with a villain that seems to keep coming back, no matter how dead he is. He's been spring-locked, returned as a restless, rotting corpse. He's been incinerated. He's been a ghost who haunted technology, getting uploaded into a game with his consciousness after he died, and now he seems to somehow be a charred husk looking for a new form. Cool, 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 great, love it. Number 1, sleepy time candy. Ugh, Moondrop, ugh. I don't really mind the energizing candy in this, the sun drop candy, although I do feel like that maybe is sus too, because caffeine and high levels of caffeine and giving that to kids. But the sleepy time candy, that you can give to kids? I really don't know about that. Moondrop is what we often name the nighttime persona of the daycare attendant. This attendant also has its own matching candy, which is named after it and known for helping kids sleep. Or does anyone sleep? Would this candy work on me? Is it not just for kids? There's something really creepy to me about a candy that involuntarily can make you pass out. There's something really creepy to me about a candy that makes you sleep at all, because, well, it could be used for nefarious purposes pretty easily. Honestly, this was probably one of the biggest things in the game that freaked me out, though the Moondrop persona of the daycare attendant in general is just really creepy. That and like when Moondrop is around, you get like the nighttime-y vibes. Oh, I don't like that either. That bothers me.
In a 10, same path. Now, part of the strategy behind the FNAF games is that the animatronics will always follow the same route every time, or I guess rather they'll come towards you the same way every time. In FNAF 1 specifically, Bonnie always comes down the left hall, while Chica and Freddy always go down the right side, and the same remains true for the rest of the games, which technically, if you think about it, means that these characters are coded this way. If they were just free roaming, that would be one thing, but the fact that they come after you and do so the same way each time would suggest that this is actually intentional. I mean, yeah, sure, twice is a coincidence, but don't they say that 3 is a pattern? Well, it's the same thing here, okay? In multiple games, the animatronics come down the same path every time. FNAF 1, FNAF 2, FNAF 4, Ultimate Custom Night, and not even just that, but the fact that the animatronics do this multiple times within the same game. Hell, how many times does Bonnie come at you down the left hall in one night, let alone throughout the whole week that you play? So yeah, we would have to logically ignore this detail because it would muddy everything else up way too much, and we have been, actually. In at 9, 1987 Easter egg. At the end of every FNAF game there is a bonus night. It gives you a bit more lore clues and more scares, and that's what we consider the 6th night. But then after beating it, you unlock a special 7th night where you can customize the level of the animatronics and give them specific difficulty ratings to see how you can actually handle those certain scenarios. However, if you were to do this with Five Nights 1, you'd obviously be looking for more clues since we literally had nothing else, and we were trying to figure out what would first be an incredible series of games. But if you tried to solve anything and you tried to be a little sneaky to figure out what that whole bite thing was about, and you put the animatronic levels to be 1987 in that order, like 1, 9, 8, and 7, the year of the bite, you'd end up getting instantly jump scared by Golden Freddy. Which is funny, but it could have had deeper implications. If you look at it through the lens of every detail means something, if you end up really thinking about it, and probably too much, you can end up seeing this as an implication that maybe Golden Freddy caused the bite of 87, and that Jeremy Fitzgerald, who we would play as in FNAF 2, who many assume to be the bite victim, could be the one possessing the animatronic. At least if we ignore that the whole missing children's incident thing takes place 2 years prior. But then again, that's just something else that we would have to ignore, so it still works. In at 8, Death Coin. In Ultimate Custom Night, you are able to get an item called a Death Coin. This allows you to use it and eliminate any animatronic from the game. This works with most animatronics. It removes them from play, and then you won't have to deal with them for the rest of that playthrough, or I guess technically life. I'm not really sure how Ultimate Custom Night defines things. But there is, at least to my knowledge, one animatronic that this coin does not work on, that being Golden Freddy. If you try it on Golden Freddy and you use the death coin on him, you end up getting jump scared by the Fredbear plush, who some believe is meant to be Psychic Friend Fredbear. And while it would make sense that you can't remove Golden Freddy because seemingly they'd be the one controlling everything, or the animatronic that gives you the most grief depending on the situation you believe is taking place, the fact that Fredbear is the one that jump scares you, the actual like plush, has to kind of be taken with a grain of salt. Because honestly, it may not have that deep of an impact. And if it did, we have really no idea what the hell that would be. Especially when Ultimate Custom Night seemingly tried to wrap up the Afton family storyline. And it's 7, Joy of Creation. There are actually some references to some of the Fazbear Fanverse Initiative games in Security Breach. For example, the Joy of Creation Easter egg of Ignited Freddy and Ignited Bonnie, found on the House of Bear and House of Bear 2 arcade cabinets found around the Pizzaplex. This is something that I actually picked up on my first time through, so needless to say, it was pretty cool that I was right about that. And I was like, hey, isn't that Ignited Freddy? And it was. And the House of Bear cabinet has like the Ignited Freddy shadow standing in the doorway, and then the House of Bear 2 machine features Ignited Bonnie's face, which could be considered Withered Bonnie, but given the context of the Ignited Freddy in the first one, I'm gonna have to say it's Ignited Bonnie. But if you really want to think about this, this could explain how like the Fazbear games fit into the timeline, since the fanverse could be the games that Scott's in-universe counterpart made, which would explain why they would have their own FNAF 1 titled FNAF Plus. But honestly, we're probably meant to ignore this idea, because let's be honest, if that was the FNAF 1 of this universe, the company wouldn't have arcade cabinets featuring the characters. So this is probably just meant to be like a happy little reference for fans of that series and nothing more. Plus, it's Steelwool who was doing that, and not Scott. And at 6, crashing. Golden Freddy has some weird abilities, okay? Like, what's with the whole crashing us to the desktop thing? Every other animatronic sends us to the main menu, but Golden Freddy for some reason sends us to our desktop. It's a very odd detail that I don't think anyone was really questioning, but it certainly seems to indicate that there could be something special about the character. Well, I mean, something more. And I don't think that it's simply maybe they're just angrier than everyone else and something like that. It would have to be more symbolic, because the only character that, when killing us, crashes us to our desktop is Nightmare from FNAF 4. They're the only 2 animatronics to crash us to the desktop instead of to the main menu, and while with Golden Freddy it may not make much sense, with Nightmare having the same ability, it may set a baseline for what's really actually happening when this happens. Nightmare in FNAF 4 is representative of death. When Nightmare gets us, we crash to the desktop in that game and truly die, which would mean that the same would have to be true for Golden Freddy, right? But then, that would make a whole load of other things messy if you want to assume that Golden Freddy is a real animatronic and possessed by Cassidy, who also is possessing William. So, you would have to ignore that detail if you're going down that route. Halfway through into number 5, Ultimate Custom Night Roster. If you want to go down the path of Cassidy being the one you should not have killed, that's fine with me, as long as you don't use that path of thinking to insult anyone who thinks otherwise. Since, after all, nothing is truly proven with this series literally ever. But, if you do believe that, for some reason Cassidy is possessing William to keep him alive to continue suffering, you kind of have to ignore the animatronics present in Ultimate Custom Night, because there is no possible way that Cassidy could know about the Nightmare animatronics. It doesn't make sense if she did. Crying Child is the one who's seeing these nightmares in his coma while in the hospital in FNAF 4, as evidenced by the flatline that we hear at the end of the game. And since he dies before waking up, he wouldn't be able to share this information with anyone. You can say that he let Cassidy know about them while they were sharing Golden Freddy or something, but that's you ignoring other details in the series. And if Cassidy wasn't Golden Freddy, how could she also be possessing William? You'd again be ignoring every other detail that we've learned about possession. And why are the animatronics calling the one you should not have killed him if it is Cassidy? Cassidy is a female in this universe, as evidenced by her counterpart in the novel trilogy and the only other human in the logbook. And if you want to say that they're saying him because of Golden Freddy, again, how could she be possessing both? And why would she make these animatronics that she is creating call her him? If she's mad about being killed, why would she be referring to herself by her animatronic? Okay, it doesn't make sense. Unless Cassidy is possessing William as the vengeful spirit, and the one you should not have killed is Crying Child, who Cassidy is using to torment William. But even still, for this to work, you'd have to ignore the nightmares being present in that game. And at 4, nightmares in VR. On that same line of thinking, how are the nightmare animatronics present in FNAF VR? If we are to assume that FNAF 4 is an actual canon plot point in the series, then these animatronics being present would be impossible. The only way that this could make sense would be if FNAF 4 specifically was one of the games that Scott's in-universe counterpart made. That's the only way that Fazbear Entertainment would know what these animatronics looked like. And it would explain why they would be present in the game that they're using to say like, yeah, this happened, but we're better now. Since they're trying to rebuild their reputation as we learn in this game. But that also calls into question every other game that we've played, because FNAF 1, 2, 3, parts of 4, and even sister location animatronics are in FNAF VR, which would mean that if they remade FNAF 4 because it was an in-universe game, every other FNAF game before this or even before FNAF 6 would be just that, a game. Getting close to the end, into number 3, Fire Dave. Found in one of the various lore duffel bags that we can stumble upon in Security Breach, it's a customer complaint titled Hi Dave, which upon inspection reads, quote, "Customer complaint. You should fire Dave. He sucks." And while it is short and sweet and to the point, it's also seemingly a reference to the FNAF novels, since if you're unaware, in the novels William Afton was introduced, but at first he was going by the alias of Dave Miller, and considering how this customer says that you should fire Dave, I think that's a pretty telling way to reference the book's most infamous employee. And it's also a reference to the fact that Afton is in the Pizzaplex right below our noses, or I guess technically our feet. Though we would have to ignore this detail because it's not really going to have much more of an impact than that, just being a reference. It's just gonna be a guy named Dave, okay? No connection to anyone else. Especially since, again, this game was from Steel Wool and not just Scott Cawthon, which is where most people tend to use the whole idea of, if Scott put it in the game, it has to mean something. But if you want to say that, and you don't want to listen to literally anything else I've said on this list, this was made by Steel Wool, so can't really use that here. But ultimately, in at number 2, Jeremy. If you spend too much time looking into names, then you're really going to be in for a crapshoot when it comes to FNAF. Considering how Scott has used the first name Jeremy way too many times for a fanbase as detail attentive as this one, because the name Jeremy has been used for the first night guard from FNAF 2, the victim who possesses Bonnie, and the first Freddy Fazbear Virtual Experience game tester who ends up cutting his face off because Glitch Trap got to him. If you really want to think that Scott puts every single detail in this and like it's meant for those details to all mean something special, how do you explain this? Okay, most of the time people just write this off as a troll, which means that if this is a troll, other things could be trolls too, right? You can't just say that everything means something aside from the Jeremy thing. That just doesn't make any form of logical sense. And you know what? It doesn't even make a form of unlogical sense. Since if anything, the name being used 3 times would be more important than like passing comments made in one game, right? Exactly. But it doesn't mean anything, okay? Bonnie isn't getting resurrected multiple times. Jeremy isn't Satan or something like that. It's just a name. It's not that deep. Finally, in at number 1, Immortal and the Restless. This detail is the reason I made this entire list. This is one comment that I've been seeing time and time again. The Immortal and the Restless was a show to show us that Afton didn't want his kid or kids, so this theory makes no sense. These details and all the others are put in there for a reason. But like, we just went over 9 details that we have to ignore either in general for things to make sense or for your certain line of thinking to make sense. Or that we've just been ignoring the whole time, meaning that we can't take every single pixel of a scene into account when trying to find the big picture. The Immortal and the Restless has never popped up again after Sister Location. There has never been another instance of that show having any significance other than just being something we watched after work in that game. It didn't reveal the mother's name, it didn't reveal that Afton never wanted his son, because if he never wanted Crying Child, why would he have sworn to put him back together? Or revealed to Michael that Elizabeth was possessed, or literally anything else that we've seen happen in this series. It just doesn't make sense. The Immortal and the Restless shows up less often than the name Jeremy. And honestly, it has just as little significance as the name. It was a soap opera, okay? What I watch on TV doesn't mirror my life or my family's situation unless it's Dr. Phil. And why would it mean that William didn't want Crying Child? Why couldn't it be that William thought his wife was having an affair? Maybe if this does have significance, it's meant to show that William snapped and killed his wife when Crying Child was born because he didn't think that it was his son. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for coming to my Fred talk. Schooled. In at 10, grand reopening. How Freddy Fazbear's or any version of it keeps reopening is a mystery in and of itself, and probably deserves its own separate video, actually. But with everything that has gone down at not only the first location, but seemingly every location after that, there has to be someone who is trying to shut it down, right? Like the one person at the start of the episode that everyone thinks is just a crank, but then close to the end we realize that they were right all along. I feel like that's kind of inevitable. Like seriously, we need to listen to the geezer with the sign. Okay, at least 9 kids have once again gone missing in the newest Fazbear location, the Freddy Fazbear Mega Pizzaplex, which resulted in multiple complaints, but as we see in the opening cutscene where Freddy glitches out, still has a full house. I don't know what's going on with these parents, but someone needs to actually do something, and the fact that these people are just like sitting on their asses and funding this horrific act, or the horrific acts at Fazbear Entertainment is shocking. Like I guess this Earth, whichever one it is, doesn't have Twitter or cancel culture. And at 9, names. While the names of the characters we know have stayed consistent, the animatronics for example, the names of other characters have been thrown around a lot. Take Crying Child for example, who has no canon name as of yet we called him many things. Crying Child, Chris, Kyle, Michael, Gregory, Evan. None of them, aside from Crying Child, have actually stuck. Well, currently anyway. We're still waiting on the whole Gregory thing to be confirmed or denied. And as for the whole like Evan name thing, they still haven't found the end in any solid fashion. So you're just jumping the shark there. Like it could be EVA and then literally any other letter in the alphabet if you want to go down that route. You can't find the last letter in a different way to all the rest and then consider it the full name. That's just reaching. Like if I went to court and said, yes, your honor, we found this bloody knife, hacksaw, and bone chipping that matched the victim at the crime scene. And we also found the defendant's DNA in an alleyway across town. Clearly they're guilty. I'd get fired and perhaps incarcerated for impersonating a lawyer even if I was certified, because that's just how bad that argument is. And Mrs. Afton doesn't even have a name, let alone a backstory. So yeah, and it ain't story. Now this is a bit of a weak one, I'll admit, but honestly, at times, so is the FNAF story. Like, there have been multiple instances where no matter our divisions in the community, we've all come together and said, really, Scott? Like when we all thought Dream Theory was possible, or when we found out William was coming back yet again in Security Breach, or even just most of Security Breach when we didn't see the two antagonists basically the whole game. In essence, you can actually only see Vanny one time instead of like the 4 times that it's possible to see her. Like if you're fast enough in the Lost and Found, you won't even be near her, and the only time you'll really see her at that point is during her introduction. Like I get it's a big pizzaplex, but come on, really, Scott? And Steel Wool. Not to mention the various points that conflict with themselves, but that's for another number. This series is just a whole load of confusing, and I think that it's something we can all agree on. And it's 7 canon. Now this isn't really something that's inconsistent with the games, but rather the fans. That's right, I'm calling you out. Because personally, I have gotten a lot of comments and DMs on my Instagram about how the books aren't canon, be it the novel trilogy or the Fazbear Frights books. And yes, they're not a part of the main continuity, but they all come from the mind of Scott Cawthon, right? Well, yes, Andrea Wagner among others do help write those short stories, but Scott approves them for being in the series. So these books, while the story isn't canon to the main continuity, the ideas of how this universe works are. But the real issue is that people only use this complaint when they don't agree with someone, because those same people are the ones who talk about how the FNAF 4 Nightmare animatronics are products of the sound illusion discs present in the Twisted ones, but Crying Child can't be a robot because the books aren't canon and I mentioned Charlie. Or Golden Freddy has 2 souls because the Stitch Wraith has 2 souls, but Crying Child can't be the one you should not have killed because the man in room 1280 and the kid in the alligator mask aren't canon. Like, come on guys, you can't pick and choose what is and isn't canon from the books. If you want me to stick to the games, you need to stick to the games as well, but you don't, so why would I? And it's 6, investigation. We know that there was an investigation into Fazbear Entertainment around the time that the original kids went missing. This is seemingly thanks to phone calls we hear in the first 3 games, as well as Sister Location's opening scene, where Afton is being interviewed by someone who I assume to be the police. Because, you know, kids going missing and then animatronics smelling like death and leaking blood should be cause for concern. It kinda makes me think that the police would have to come and investigate despite what they believed or if they were being paid off. And then they would find out about the animatronics, okay? They would find out about everything that's going on inside. The wiki says that it was like management or something, but to me, that doesn't make sense because he's the suit technician and, as we know, thanks to the books, part owner of Fazbear Entertainment. I mean, that's also like the only way he'd have any pull in this situation. Like, I still can't believe that people don't understand this, saying that William only worked there, because that's not the case. While yes, they investigated, apparently they didn't have enough for an arrest or convictions, which is seemingly ridiculous because, like, at least they'd have circumstantial evidence, especially if they're interviewing William about the robots containing containment chambers that are the size of a child, but, you know. It's FNAF. Halfway through into number 5, timeline. The timeline is one of the worst inconsistencies for any FNAF fan or theorist alike, and it's something that I've tackled only once and I was blatantly incorrect about since Security Breach. Once Security Breach came out, it kind of destroyed that, since it all relied on the FNAF AR emails taking place when they actually were dated for, and assuming that Security Breach was around the same time. However, my placement for Security Breach specifically was definitely wrong. Although my placement for AR, depending on the situation, could be pretty damn good. Although that's a story for another day. I'll be attempting another timeline in tomorrow's video, so stay tuned for that. However, the main issue with the timeline for everyone is the amount of contradicting information. And this is the reason it's changing all the time and it's so inconsistent. Because any timeline you make, you will have to disregard something from the series. It's inevitable. There are too many things that contradict themselves, and unless you spend countless hours trying to explain it all away, it's not going to be worth it to try and include every single detail. Most theories also rely on other theories to fill in the blanks, which only makes things worse, since if that one theory falls apart, so does the rest of the timeline. And for possession. I'm going to be honest, possession as I see it in the series has been pretty consistent, but the possession that I see others talking about makes no sense at all. It started off with the missing children possessing the robots that they were stuffed into, right? Chica was Susie, Freddy was Gabriel, Fritz was Foxy, Jeremy was Bonnie, and Cassidy was Golden Freddy. And that made sense. And then it expanded to Henry pouring his grief over losing his daughter into the Ella doll, which let him stay alive while giving something sentience, which ended up being separate from the possession that we know. Possession and the whole remnant thing that was going on with the Ella doll, among others, are two entirely different things. But now, people are going on about how Golden Freddy has two souls, and how people are possessing multiple objects and even sometimes objects and a person at the same time. That's absolutely absurd. Like, I've explained multiple times how there cannot be two souls possessing Golden Freddy, especially one of them being Crying Child, but I'll do it one more time for good measure. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time. Crying Child dies in the hospital in 1983, as we know from the flatline at the end of FNAF 4. We also know that the Springlock suits and the Funtime animatronics were built around the same time thanks to FNAF AR's Fast Facts. But we don't know when the original 5 animatronics from FNAF 1 were made. At least I couldn't find it in my research. I might find it later. They could have made Golden Freddy in 1984 or even early 1985 before the kids went missing. So on that front, it's possible that Golden Freddy didn't even exist at the time Crying Child died. Secondly, every instance of possession that we have seen has had the one doing the possessing near the thing that they possess, especially in the games. And keep in mind that I'm talking specifically about possession. So how could Crying Child possess Golden Freddy if he was at the hospital? Getting close to the end, and in number 3, FNAF 4. FNAF 4 continues to be one of the biggest points of contention for all fans of the series, and I say that every time. And it's seemingly divided into 4 groups, or rather 4 groups of 2. Those who know the game takes place in 1983, and those who think the game takes place in 1987. Yes, those still exist. I've been seeing it in the comments, unless those are all trolls. As well as the group who believes this game is a dream, and those who think that the game takes place in the FNAF real life. And these debates don't really help anyone else figure out anything more about this series, and I don't know why we're really debating it. Like, yeah, certain big FNAF community members end up saying one thing and then a load of people end up agreeing with them, but when more evidence comes to light, we need to learn to understand that and change our opinions. With FNAF 4, for example, Daco, I believe it was, said that thanks to the cameras from Sister Location that the game took place in real life. And now a load of people believe that. But after Ultimate Custom Night, we learned that the animatronics never had a physical form, and the sound illusion discs have never even been mentioned in the games. So assuming that these animatronics were made from the sound is jumping the shark a bit, since these are also the people who get mad when you use the books as evidence. Especially with Ultimate Custom Night seemingly being a dream and not really real. It makes FNAF 4 even more likely to be a dream at that point, because of the whole Ultimate Custom Night thing and parallels with his son. Plus Daco said that, and then Scott ended up posting on later on like Reddit or something, I'm pretty sure, saying that nobody had actually figured out FNAF 4, so that kind of debunks it. But ultimately, in number 2, colors. The colors are such an important part of FNAF, okay? Figuring out the lore, at least in the early stages of the series, required us to hone in and focus on the colors of characters' eyes, characters' text colors, shirts. Hell, we identified the main killer of the series based on his color, and then argued over if there were 2 killers, since one of them was a slightly lighter shade than the first one. After that, Scott realized how important colors were, and he made sure to keep that in mind. Michael talks in gray, Baby's eyes changed from blue to green after Elizabeth possesses her, William's killer form is in purple, hell, even the spring spring lock suits are the same color. But then we got thrown a curveball. One of the most consistent things in this whole series was just seemingly tossed out the window. In the Midnight Motorist minigame, a game we were picking to shreds because the car color was purple like Williams from the Take Cake minigame from FNAF 2, dropped a random orange man in the middle of our screens. A man that we would come to know as the Orange Guy, yet someone who also lived with Michael, who we could see thanks to his gray shirt and gray text, and also had a younger child. Again, with the consistency. Then, who were we playing as? Well, we were playing as William, but why was he orange instead of purple? That's something I think I answered in another video, okay? Link is in the iCard, you should go watch it, if I can remember to put it in the iCard, because I say that a lot and then I forget which videos I actually have to do that for. And finally, in number 1, Springtrap. William Afton is a tricky fiend. He somehow, no matter what, seems to get away with whatever scheme he's cracked up because he's just that lucky or just that kind of person. Or maybe he has the Infinity Gauntlet, I don't know. But if he does, it would explain a lot, since in every game after the introduction of Springtrap where we see William, he has a new design. And it's not a design that could easily be explained away by the suit decaying or being torn. No, Springtrap to Scraptrap, his head seemingly doubled in size. And then Scraptrap to Burntrap, it seemingly went back to normal. Like, this whole time, however, it remained William Afton as proven in Ultimate Custom Night. So like, what the hell is the deal here, Scott? How did this happen? My best explanation was artistic license. Like, Scott just ran with the idea that he thought he would make Springtrap scarier since a load of people were upset with the original jump scare and he didn't want that repeating itself. But in the process, he confused the hell out of us. So in Security Breach, he went back to closer to the original design and just like swapped out his missing limbs for Glamrock animatronic parts. There were people in the comments of the whole "we solved Burntrap" theory video who said that I was comparing to fan models of Glamrock Bonnie, so my statement wasn't accurate. I just wanted to say that I wasn't comparing them to models of Glamrock Bonnie. I was comparing them to the endoskeletons that are present within the game that are used for the Glamrock animatronics. The endoskeleton that Monty and Freddy use, since they're the male ones, since that's the one that Bonnie would have used as well. Just because for the sake of explanation we showed fan models on screen in the video doesn't mean that's what I was comparing. In the video I literally said I was comparing endos. So yeah, my point still stands on that. In at 10, paint cans. After starting the game and getting to the free roam section of Security Breach where you have the tutorial for distracting animatronics, I just want to mention how goddamn lucky that is, okay? Like, one of the animatronics that you're going to need to avoid, no matter how damn fine she is, you need to avoid her, is literally eating garbage right in your way. But somehow, there's also a stack of paint cans randomly on a random cart in the middle of the hall in front of you. The cart is also, for some reason, blocking the hall, which I'm sure multiple employees love having to take the long way around, but it's fine that it's blocking the way because you can knock over these convenient and empty paint cans so that Chica will come and investigate it. I'd say her taking the way that she does is also lucky, however, this is like one of the only times where pathing makes sense since she's right next to the door that she ends up using, and I think that any other person in this situation would have done the same thing. However, one thing that I don't understand is in at 9, inconvenient exit. During the so-called interrogation and torture scene in Parts and Service, from what I've been seeing YouTube videos titled online, Vanessa is questioning Freddy about Gregory and accusing him of helping Gregory, which I mean is true, but she shouldn't have to actually accuse him of that, more on that later. But after telling him that she's gonna leave him down there until his casing can be put on a new endo, which doesn't really make sense if the coating is the issue and not the endoskeleton, like, still, why would you leave to go to Rockstar Row through Roxy's lift when you could easily have just turned around, come our way, and headed into the main atrium? That's where Gregory is for the majority of the game. That's where all the animatronics have been spotting him, and it would make more sense to go there than to Rockstar Row, where maybe he was seen twice at this point. I don't know, it seems weird to me, but the reason that this is lucky is because had she chosen to go the more logical route, which would have been towards us, she would have walked through the doors we were hiding behind, and it's not like we have much room to hide around them, okay? The walls on either side of this door are made of glass. She would see us run into the charging station or wherever else we went. So yeah, her choosing to exit in the most inconvenient way to her actually ends up helping us out. And at 8, Freddy. Just everything that Gregory does with Freddy seems to work out eventually, even if not at first. Look at what he does before the doors actually close the first time. He sends us to get a pass in order to free him from the green room, and then everything seems to be going well. But then for some random reason, without ever mentioning this before, he tells us that he senses that we are broken and that he needs to bring us to a medical tent so that he can fix us up. Whether this was meant to be a nod to Crying Child or not in this case doesn't matter. Point is, is here that it didn't do anything, okay? We get a run-in with Vanessa that later turns into a TikTok meme, but other than that, we stay the same, okay? We don't get healed, we don't get a band-aid, because we could have had the one that's on his character from the start, and we get in that booth, instantly turn around to watch the Vanessa and Freddy scene, and then after that, we leave instantly, and Freddy never mentions how we're still broken. And being broken, in this case, never seems to come up again or cause us any issues, especially since now with that little pit stop, even if you go full steam ahead, you can't make it out of the front doors in time. That one little interaction is the 30 seconds that we needed in order to escape out the front doors, but thanks to Freddy, we didn't make it. But he still doesn't abandon us. He just tries to help. I mean, I don't know, it's off, okay? And if Freddy is evil, him not revealing it there and then is definitely lucky as hell. And in 7, Vanny. There were a load of complaints about how Vanny was an underutilized villain, and I totally agree. She only shows up like maybe 5 times in the main story, but like every time she does, she seemingly is taunting us instead of actually pursuing us. Like sure, if she gets close enough she will charge, but in my mind that's just her thinking like, oh, I actually have a shot now, might as well try and grab him. But her just casually skipping while going after Gregory and then only really coming at him like 5 times in total is actually pretty solid luck on Gregory's part. Like she always seems to know where Gregory is when she does show up, so if she was around regularly we would have to constantly be on the move. And she also shows up whenever Gregory doesn't have access to Freddy, as if it's like she knows that he doesn't have access, which would only make this worse for him, but it's fine, which in my mind at least is pretty damn lucky. This is one lucky duck, let me tell you. And at 6, Disassemble. In the Phaser Blast ending, the one where you push the button instead of playing Princess Quest 3, Gregory actually ends up ordering the robots to disassemble Vanny. Gregory being willing to kill Vanny here is pretty messed up. However, it's lucky that these staff bots even understood that command. Okay, Vanny is a human, not something that's typically seen as capable of disassembly, okay? When a serial killer hacks up a body, okay, the police don't say that the victim was disassembled, they say they were dismembered, okay? This guy kills Vanny and then only gets emotional when he has to go talk to a destroyed Freddy. Okay, like dude, okay, Vanny is literally bleeding out next to you. We saw what happened to Freddy, okay? That was the disassembly. So, yeah, couldn't you just have said like stop or restrain Vanny? Particularly stop, okay? You didn't have to say freaking disassemble. I get that she said that about Freddy and it was fresh in your mind, but dude, okay? You're not panicking about literally anything else. And if the robots hadn't understood that command because, humans aren't disassembled, then it would have caused you a hell of a lot of pain. It worked on Freddy because robots can be disassembled because they get assembled in the first place. But now I am definitely going to start calling pregnancy assembling a human now, so that's fun. Thanks for that. Halfway through into number 5, Not a Snitch. Okay, I don't know how Gregory survived security breach in general, alright? There were plenty of times that this kid could have got. Particularly though when Freddy gets grabbed by the Moondrop animatronic right outside parts of service. You're telling me that Moondrop, the daycare attendant, the guy who has been chasing us every hour on the hour, told Vanessa that Freddy was in the parts and service room, but didn't mention that we were in the recharge station right next to it? He knew we were there. He waved at us while taking Freddy away. And then Vanessa talks to Freddy as if she doesn't know that we're listening in. It's almost like they're putting on a show. Like sure, the daycare attendant isn't able to get us while we're in a recharge station, but we clearly aren't visible to him. He waved. So why wouldn't he also inform Vanessa about a kid in the recharge station while also saying, oh yeah, and I got Freddy? Okay, and if he did, why not bring that up when talking to Freddy instead of just asking him if he's helping us? Okay, it doesn't make sense. Daycare attendant not ratting on us is definitely a lucky moment, okay? I guess maybe he knows that snitches get stitches and that Gregory will tear him limb from limb with a smile on his face if he did, so maybe that's how it works. And at 4, Destruction. Speaking of tearing animatronics limb from limb, isn't it convenient that there is a way to break every other animatronic that isn't Freddy, and then that leaves the animatronic broken in the right way to remove whatever aspect that you actually needed to upgrade Freddy? Hell yeah it is. It's so lucky that there is somehow a way to break each of the animatronics in the perfect amount for the animatronics as well, okay? And it works the first time. And even with Chica, okay, we push her into a trash compactor and somehow don't get crushed ourselves despite her grabbing onto our leg, okay? We only get pulled into another area that we can still get back to the Pizzaplex through instead of being pulled into the trash compactor and crushed. So yeah, needless to say that looking at it logically, it's extremely lucky that there is a way to destroy each of the evil animatronics in a way that allows us to access their specific upgrades. Even though we didn't need to crush the animatronics and instead it could have just chilled in Freddy's green room until 6 AM when the doors opened. So yeah, lucky us. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Fire. Alright, so during the true ending of the otherwise known as the Afton ending or the Burn Trap ending or whatever you want to call it ending, we have to fend off Burn Trap's attempts to take control over Freddy by setting him on fire using what I'm guessing are the mechanisms that Henry used to set fire to the FNAF 6 location. However, I mean, it's pretty convenient how we fall into the room that we need to in this case, with monitors set up connected to the cameras in the various rooms that Burn Trap enters exclusively, with buttons that light the fires in those various rooms that correspond with the monitor, despite it being far more convenient for Henry to light everything at the same time with one button. Think about it, okay? How are these working still? It's clearly been a while, okay? Based on some comments, apparently the Pizzaplex has been open for at least 4 years, which I don't know if it's accurate, but if it is, these cameras and old computers are still working 4 years after being set on fire. That was enough to ruin the building. Not to mention a sinkhole that had to open up underneath it since we have to travel down an elevator to get there, and like, how is it working after all of that? And if you say that it was Vanny, why make sure the fire systems are still working and then set them to be on separate buttons, okay? Plus, now, these computer monitors are literal dinosaurs. How did they work before the fire, let alone after? Yeah. And ultimately, in number 2, Boy Genius. The absolute mountain of knowledge that this kid has exceeds my own, okay? This kid is the size of a 4-year-old. He can fit inside Freddy, baby strollers, like popcorn kind of vending cart things that you can find around the Pizzaplex, and various other small areas. He's too small to drive one of the go-karts alone and has to get one of his, like, the instructor bot things, but he knows how to restart generators, operate a trash compactor. He's strong enough to restart generators, and he's also capable of driving a car, as well as identifying the car battery, connecting jumper cables on a car battery properly, and then using those to fix Freddy's recharging issue, okay? How does this make any sense? And how do they solve that issue in literally any other ending, okay? Because Freddy is still going to need to recharge every hour, supposedly, or at least he says that he does. I don't really believe that that's a story for another day. But like, how does this happen? Okay, how do they solve that issue? This kid knows more words than I do, but is somehow the size of a 4-year-old. Maybe even smaller, okay? It makes absolutely no sense. And this kid's weird superpower is what makes this game so confusing. It really only makes sense if he's a robot that's supposed to mimic a toddler who's been operational for decades and has been learning the whole time, okay? Or that Security Breach is really just a cleverly skinned Jimmy Neutron fan game, okay? Which one is more likely here? And finally, in at number 1, Free Roam Freddy. We've talked a lot about the parts and service section, okay? Because Gregory just seems to have gotten extremely lucky at multiple points in this chapter of the game, one after the other. However, the luckiest, I think, comes from after Vanessa leaves Freddy in parts and service. She says that it's so that his casing can be put on a new endo after either corporate gives the green light or they have someone on the clock who can actually just remove it and put it on someone else. But she doesn't seem to be suspicious that he's walking around Rockstar Row literally within like maybe 3 minutes if you've played the section before and don't mess up the memory game, okay? Like, who would have repaired him if not Gregory? There is literally no other living human in the Pizzaplex at this point, and the whole containment cylinder thing is to protect human beings. There are no staff bots in parts and service, and the reason you had to leave him there was because nobody else is working since it's after midnight. Why would Vanessa be so chill about Freddy walking around after that? I mean, like, she literally left him with his head removed, and if she assumed that somehow he did it himself, why wouldn't she then confine him to his room if he's that suspicious? Especially after just accusing him of helping to protect Gregory. It was something that confused me so much in my first playthrough, so I figured that Vanessa would pull us out of Freddy if we got too close. But I walked up to her to test it, and nothing. It would have been easy to make just a little modification to her code for this part of the game and make her actually be like, why are you here? Rip out Freddy. Or rip out Gregory, not Freddy. But like, come on, you could have made Vanessa a little bit more dangerous at this point, but no, okay? Gregory venting certainly isn't the only thing that's sus about this game. Let me just say that. In at 10, Princess Quest. The whole Princess Quest thing, its purpose was to lock Vanny away and prevent her from regaining control of her own body. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a fail-safe that allows her to escape? I mean, like, sure, they didn't expect a random kid to come along, figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of Afton and his plans, you'd think that he would have smartened up after at least 50 years. I don't understand. That's like having a self-destruct button on the bomb that you wanted to make sure nobody could stop. Or if Superman had like a kill me button, or just like had like a free kryptonite vending machine that he just put out in the middle of Metropolis. It's stupid. Like, if you want something to work, why give it a possible way to fail? One of the dumbest things that William has ever done. But he's also so goddamn lucky that it didn't backfire canonically. Seriously, what's the point behind having a way to undo your evil plans? This could just as reasonably actually been the canon ending to the game, even though we play as a kid the size of a 4-year-old. And the fact that it wasn't the canon ending, it's pure luck the way that that didn't happen, okay? Just like bury the third machine if you insist on doing this. And at 9, Vanessa. Possessing Vanessa itself was certainly one of the more messed up things that William did, okay? I mean, it kind of sounds weird, you know, and also extremely unrealistic. Like, this guy just pops up in your VR headset, then takes over your body after you collected 16 digital VHS tapes, or cassette tapes, I guess technically. But then after he takes over your body, you end up killing for him, okay? That's messed up. And like, not even kind of, that's incredibly messed up. But also, like, how? I mean, like, she knows what's going on too. She actively talks in hushed tones about how she can't talk to her therapist about it. But like, Afton got lucky with specifically was that Vanessa has no willpower to actually sacrifice for the greater good, okay? I mean, like, at this point, I feel like it's fairly safe to infer that Jeremy from FNAF AR didn't go crazy because he just saw Glitch Trap. I think it's fairly reasonable to say that he got possessed. At this point, Tape Girl hadn't broken up Glitch Trap into the tapes yet, and he was probably just able to possess whoever he wanted. So if Jeremy did get possessed, and the possession worked in a similar way to that it did to Vanessa, Jeremy would at times be sentient and in control of his own body. So if he knew about Glitch Trap, maybe he didn't cut his face off because he was freaking out. Maybe he did it to try to kill the monster that was inside him. And at 8, Springlock suits. The Springlock suits in general are also something that William and even Henry both got extremely lucky with. Like, while Henry may not have like designed the Springlock suits, he certainly let Afton create them and then allowed for their use in the restaurants despite them being incredibly dangerous to employees, only putting them out of commission when someone eventually got hurt and not actually being proactive because, you know, they are literal death machines. You make separate animatronics and then you have separate costumes, okay? That's the right move, that's the smart move, that's the safe move. But these so-called businessmen thought, yeah, I'll put the safety of my employees at risk by making them wear a hot as balls suit filled with robot parts that even with the slightest bit of moisture will shoot those robotic parts right back to where your bones are. What can possibly go wrong? Like, you think that Willy Wonka has OSHA violations? Imagine FNAF's OSHA violations. Oh wait, actually, you don't have to, because we already did a whole list on that. Be sure you go check it out. But seriously, the fact that nobody sued them because they were being put in these things instead of, like, you know, much safer and cheaper options of, you know, a fabric suit is insane. And at 7, calling the cops. Let's look at this logically, alright? Henry knew what was going on with Afton, and that Afton had some shady scenarios cooking in his brain. So if he knew that this man was up to no good, and he was fearing for his daughter's safety, why didn't he make the call to the police and be like, hey man, so this William Afton guy is like thinking about killing kids, and probably is the one that's been killing the kids that you're looking for. Like, I mean, sure, maybe you didn't have proof, but you could have certainly tipped them off, and then they could have, you know, found the proof. Come on, they could at least keep a closer eye on him, but you didn't. And instead, you did a whole load of other that in reality didn't do anything to stop William. I mean, you did one thing that put him out of commission for like 30 years, but again, that was only 30 years. You could have stopped him. You could have actually stopped him in his tracks, but instead you chose to keep your mouth shut. That is Afton's plot armor working overtime with no extra pay. And at 6, leave it to fate. FNAF 6 was supposed to be the end of the Afton story. I was so looking forward to it. That's what Henry sets out to do in this game. Make sure that nobody remembered what happened there. However, this also figured that the first fire didn't work, so a second one surely will. And in fact, he was so confident in this plan for whatever goddamn reason that he actually let himself die in the process to leave nobody remembering what happened. But he didn't think that even if himself, William, and all their kids are dead, the parents of the victims still know. And as we learned from Security Breach in the duffel bags, there are other parents who remember it too. Like, it's a whole thing in the FNAF universe. They cite the missing children from the Pizzaplexes happening again. If Henry had stuck around to see if the job was really done, maybe William wouldn't have been able to possess Vanny and come back yet again and just kill more people. Henry should have lit the place up, smashed everything that survived, and then maybe you could have offed yourself. But at least make sure the job is done first. Halfway through into number 5, worst Easter ever. here. Okay, from an in-universe perspective, in Security Breach, Vanny brought back seemingly this Earth's most prolific killer. But from a story perspective, it also kinda comes out of nowhere and feels forced. And in a game sense, he also just looks terrifying and then sends all the broken animatronics after us. And lore-wise, Afton's back again. However, he's also not entirely back this time, considering how this version actually seems to finally be dead, however only functional because maybe the coded version of Afton's consciousness is inside the animatronic. No matter what, this shouldn't have worked. He shouldn't have been able to have a sentient code form possessed Vanny, but then also be able to be present in his actual body. Like what? Unless this entire time after getting spring locked, his consciousness was instantly turned into a code, and that was then controlling the Springtrap suit, and in a way I guess would make sense. I mean, it would make a lot more sense than him being possessed by the spirit of his son. But from everything we've gotten, including Ultimate Custom Night and the man in room 1280, he was possessed, but to be kept alive so he could keep suffering, okay? Meaning that none of this should have worked. But it did, and it forsprung. So this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that made these suits, that handles the maintenance and has explained to every employee that has put on one of these things on like the proper procedure for the spring lock suits and making sure that it doesn't, you know, snap and then kill you, including the spring bodysuit that he uses to kill, ends up climbing inside the suit in a panic in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful. But somehow he's so smart that he didn't notice the leaking goddamn ceiling, which is already a health hazard, which you should have noticed beforehand. But then this also causes the spring locks that were active to snap shut, which would have killed him. However, this lucky mother hubber somehow managed to get possessed by someone who was so pissed at him that they kept him alive through all of his supposed to be deaths because they wanted William to suffer. Did they not realize how counterintuitive that is? The man literally wants to live forever, and you are enabling him to do so. Old Man Consequences is right. Leave the demon to his demons. Rest your own soul so that Afton could finally die and then actually suffer in hell for all of eternity, instead of a goddamn dream version that you made up when he was recharging underneath the Pizzaplex, or before he showed up in FNAF 6, or whenever you were goddamn torturing him with all this fake hell you made up. God damn it! Getting close to the end in number 3, first victim. They say that a killer's first victim is the most important, since it might indicate what really got them to start killing, or other psychological clues that they can use to predict his next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time. And while we may have talked about how Henry dropped the ball before, this was the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst of ways. Cause like he started killing off kids, and then he sticks with that MO throughout the rest of the criminal career, then like he also loses his kids after that. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't really suspect him of anything, even though her father did, is something that I fear. But ultimately, in number 2, baby. This guy is actually the luckiest mother alive. This girl was killed by a robot her father made that was specifically designed to kill. She was then locked away in an underground storage unit where she was regularly shocked and tortured by scientists, technicians that William probably hired so that they could try and find out the answers to why she's possessed. She goes through all of this, is locked underground for like 45 years at least, and then goes on to try to make her father proud in FNAF 6. She literally says, quote, "I will make proud, daddy," while her father is literally in the building with her. Girl, this man is the reason you are dead. Literally, there is no debate about it here. This is 100% William's fault. And the fact that he didn't put a blacklist of people not to kill only makes this more on him. But you still want to make him proud? And finally, and at number 1, the Palladium rule. I will stand by this until the day I die. And you know what? I used to call it the Platinum rule, but now it's the Palladium rule because it's a meme and I love it. The most ridiculous but luckiest thing that has ever happened in FNAF was the fact that William Afton killed people in his own place of business and then didn't get caught. I don't know if this was always his intention, but like, who the absolute living hell would think that this is a good idea? Seriously, even if it's a TV show, okay, How I Met Your Mother does have some good lessons. One of those is Barney's Platinum rule, which is if you have to see the person every day because you work with them or they live in an apartment next door to you, okay, don't engage in some form of relationship, okay, because come a breakup, which is statistically probable, it just results in awkwardness and pain. And while this isn't the exact same thing, you are at this building all the time. Your name is a part of the company uni, so why would you think that this is a good idea? Literally go anywhere else, okay? You ended up even getting banned while there was an investigation underway. I don't get it. And at 10, don't run. What do you do if a group of bad guys is coming after you at a good pace and you have no way to defend yourself? You get the hell out of there faster than my dad trying to get milk, faster than William's wife left him, faster than me going outside when someone asks if I want to get Taco Bell. The fact that we're in this tiny office is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. Like, honestly, why would we stay in this room when we see on the security cameras that the animatronics aren't nearby? We can just like book it and be safe. Like, why isn't there a one-way emergency exit out of our office if this is such a hazard? We stay in this room, and that wouldn't happen in real life if you were in any sort of actual danger. In Game Lab, MatPat's old YouTube Red series, we saw him take on a real FNAF experience. However, when the animatronics were close, he didn't run away, he stayed in the office. Which could be used to say that since we consider that our safe space, we would do the same. But if our life was actually in danger, like mortal danger, we are gonna die danger, we would run like the wind, and not work there for 7 days before getting fired. Then at 9, animatronics. Now, ignoring the whole possession thing, since that still isn't real, I've seen no evidence of it, especially due to intense agony, the whole servos locking up so we need to let them roam free at night thing is complete and utter BS. Firstly, in a world where we can have shape-shifting animatronics and discs that emit such high-frequency sounds that they alter what we see, I'm supposed to believe that a servo motor is going to lock up? Secondly, why do they need to free roam in the first place? They just stand on a stage. A servo motor creates linear or circular motion, which is not the kind of movement the animatronics need. I mean, it could be, but if these are so complex that they can move on their own, why would they lock in the first place? Not to mention the whole, yeah, someone got bit on the head so we're gonna stop making them roam around freely. Like, why would you do that in the first place? Or the fact that kids literally tear Mangle to bits and then put her back together. Ironically, because, you know, put you back together. But still, it makes no sense. Before I continue on, can you do me a huge favor and hit that like button if you're enjoying the video or just the channel in general? And feel free to share this with a friend if you're so inclined. It really helps us out against the algorithm and lets us know what you want to see more of. And you know, helps me keep my job. Thank you. And at 8, technology. Speaking of animatronics, what is up with the technology in this world? They're so advanced, but at the same time, they have the same tech that they would have in that era. The illusion discs are already crazy overpowered. Like, life is a perfectly balanced game with absolutely no exploits, but those things are absolutely nuts. And then there's the Funtime animatronics, where Baby literally stores a claw in her stomach and can capture children, and their AI is so advanced that Ballora can talk, and she isn't really possessed. Unless we go off the FNAF novels, and even if we did, it's from 5 different kids, so they would just be gargling. And the animatronics' ability to free roam is incredible. They were doing this before they got possessed as well, so their AI is incredibly advanced. Yet for some reason, they don't have smartphones or better computers. Like, NASA would be interested in the AI of these animatronics, so why is there other pieces of technology that are the same as they would normally be in that era? It makes no sense to me. And at 7, wall tiles. FNAF 3 is a trippy game to say the least. With multiple different endings and a load of puzzles along the way, the supposed to be final game of the series takes some weird turns. But I think the most egregious offense is the freaking goddamn wall tiles. Why do you have to dial in a phone number on some panels in the wall in order to set souls of dead kids free? Like, what? Where did that come from, and why is nobody questioning this anymore? Like, the other games came out and we just forgot about this. Was it because the series was meant to be a dream but isn't anymore? Like, is it because William had left some weird security pad behind these tiles? Is it not real at all and we're just tripping balls? Because honestly, with the amount of hallucinations and fear we have, not to mention any sleep deprivation that could also be happening, it's entirely plausible that this just isn't real at all, and that these wall tiles, special minigames, and shadow Bonnie action figures we do see are just a result of multiple different issues. That, or it's the reason William started killing, because, like, WTF. And at 6, limited power. The original difficulty of this game comes from the fact that you have limited power, at least in FNAF 1. This adds stakes since you can't just keep your doors closed the whole time, and you can't just keep the lights on outside. And it's explained to us, and just flat out told to us in the survival logbook, that the building has limited power after 12 AM. Why? That makes no sense. Absolutely none. Why would a building have restricted power after midnight? I've never heard of that before. And unless the franchise owner is extremely cheap and doesn't want more of an electricity bill, there would be no reason to set up a system that cuts you off. Plus, if that's the case, Why risk a more costly lawsuit in that case if someone does get hurt or dies because of the limited power? Even if you won and didn't have to pay, you still have to pay the lawyer fees, because by no means would any judge make someone who got injured at work pay for the company's fees. At least I'd hope not. Especially when the game takes place. Halfway through into number 5, FNAF AR. I've said it before and I will say it a million more times. Why is the company sending out animatronics that they know are dangerous? The whole point of FNAF AR is that the company is sending these animatronics to try and rebuild their reputation. Same thing with Help Wanted. But then they see that they're infected with a virus turning them hostile, but instead of recalling them like any normal company, they send out more animatronics, including multiple versions of the killer that caused them to lose their reputation in the first place. They did not think that it was just an older Bonnie model and decided to call it Springtrap. If that was the case, it would be listed in AR as Old Bonnie or Spring Bonnie, not Springtrap. They know exactly what they're doing and nobody has called them out yet. Companies will get in trouble for making a freaking tiny mistake in their game, but this company can get away with just letting people die? That's sus as hell. Purple is sus. And for business deals, the people behind the Fazbear Entertainment Company, whether it be some board of directors or William Afton, aren't the brightest bunch. The ideas are there, but they're not executed well. Why the living hell would hiring someone to make games about the tragedies that took place in your restaurants ever seem like a good idea? That shouldn't have worked in the slightest. The main concept of using a game to make fun of the deaths of kids is already pretty messed up. And while it seems to have worked in the FNAF universe, why did they ever try it? Those events now will never be lost in time. Those games are there forever. And if they're as popular as the games are in our world, there are people who made whole YouTube channels about the series. At least when YouTube comes out. When does YouTube come out in this world? Like, I know one kid said MatPat's line in one of the Fazbear Frights books, and then the book said, as his favorite YouTuber says, but like, when did that story take place? After 2005, or was YouTube around earlier in this timeline? Because if it is, am I still the host on Top 10 Gaming? I kinda wanna be canon in FNAF 2. And at 3, business expansion. When a company undergoes a tragedy like 5 missing children, you can usually assume that they're either going under or will never be the same. This would go for any company, but especially a company directed at kids. Like, if Chuck E. Cheese actually had this happen, nobody would be taking their kids there. But for some reason, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has not only been able to keep their doors open, but make them bigger, opening an entire shopping mall based on their characters. How the actual hell did this happen? From having to shut down at the end of basically every FNAF game, to opening an entire mall-sized pizzaplex that has even more opportunities for your kids to get lost in? What the ever-loving crap happened to make that work? This has to be the most ridiculous form of logic in this series. I'm not even exaggerating. I don't care how many comments say that they would love a real FNAF. If it was actually real and there were actual deaths, you'd be scared crapless to go there. You wouldn't actually go unless you were an adult with no kids, or a YouTuber trying to put together the mystery of what really happened, and to see if their pizza is recycled. Penultimately, in a number 2, investigation. Speaking of trying to find out what really happened, why didn't the cops? We know that there was an investigation thanks to the Midnight Motorist minigame from FNAF 6, but they never found the bodies, even though the animatronics smelt like death and were oozing mucus and blood. So much that they had to actually shut down according to the FNAF 1 news clippings. So what gives? Why did they close their investigation so quickly? Or why didn't they look into the suits when it was reported that they were leaking blood? I don't care if it's the 80s and the police don't have the tech they do now. If a place you were investigating missing people but found no bodies had something that is leaking blood, you go check that out. You don't just leave it behind and say, that can't be related. Who the hell thinks like that? It's so disgusting to me. And honestly, even though it's a game that has to have a reason to continue, they should have done more. I get that if they had found the bodies, we wouldn't have gotten so many games, but sometimes it's quality over quantity. Guess they had to meet their arrest quota for the month or something, so they just dropped this case like it was coal. Finally, in at number 1, doors! You knew this was going to be on the list. I hate the goddamn mother-loving doors in this game. Why do they open when the power is out? That makes no sense. Even if it's an electromagnet, like everyone keeps saying in the comments whenever I bring this up, those require power to turn on. So if anything, it would be costing power to keep the doors open rather than closed. Gravity doesn't work in reverse. If the magnet is off, the door would just fall down. I get that it's supposed to be for gameplay purposes, but what in this universe makes this make sense? There is no conceivable way that these doors should be working in that way, but they do. They do, and it makes me mad. Why do you do this to me? Sky Daddy Scott, why? I really want merch that says Sky Daddy Scott though, for real. That would be hilarious. Just like Scott's avatar on like a cloud. Yes. And 10 closed doors. Okay, so the reason we get stuck in the Pizzaplex in the first place in this game is because we don't make it to the doors before midnight and then they close on us. Somehow being unable to open again, despite that being a horrible safety hazard. But that's still awfully convenient for not only the game, but for Vanny and William Afton in general, right? I mean, it's not lucky for us, but this is about the game's luckiest moments. So how did that happen? Well, before the doors close, Freddy sends us to get a pass in order to free him from his green room, and then everything seems to go well for that part. But then, for some reason, without ever mentioning it before, Freddy tells us that he senses that we're broken and that he needs to bring us to medical so that we can get fixed up. Even though we are literally inside of him at the start of the game, and when he pulls us out he scans us, but this is suddenly a new problem. Well, we then get a run-in with Vanessa, and then Freddy fends her off, but other than that, we stay the same. We don't get healed, we don't get a band-aid, we get in the booth, instantly turn around and then start watching the scene in front of us, almost as if it was just to like build our trust with Freddy. After that, Freddy doesn't ever mention how we're broken or injured again, especially since after that little stop, even if you go full steam ahead the fastest you can go sprinting the entire time, you can't make it out the front doors. In 9 you're supposed to be on lockdown. Freddy, you're supposed to be on lockdown is the first line that we hear Vanessa say in this game, and it's also the start of the meeting that I just talked about. The one that we really shouldn't have had because we weren't injured? Yeah, well, interestingly, this conversation actually also describes how lucky we are. Firstly, if Freddy is supposed to be on lockdown, why is it just Freddy who is? Like, why? Is it because he glitched out? And if that is the case, wouldn't you be glad that he's working again? You know, for the company's sake? And secondly, it's incredible that Vanessa sees Freddy, tells him that he's supposed to be on lockdown, and then doesn't escort him back, allowing him to just roam free afterwards. And then she doesn't even continue to go the way she was walking. After scolding Freddy, she turns around and walks back the way she came while she was searching for us, facing even more towards us while we're in the booth, and doesn't notice the feet under the curtain or the kid watching from between the curtains. Weird, right? Especially when she's supposed to be looking for us. I don't know, it just seems off to me, okay? It's like a whole load of this game does. Oh, by the way, if you're liking this video and want to see more weird moments from Security Breach that shouldn't have happened, hit like and subscribe and let me know in the comments. In at 8, Pizza Maker. When we end up getting trapped by Chica, if you don't try to escape through all chips and you try to go the other way, we end up getting stuck in a security office with only one working door, which Chica is guarding. However, we also just so happen to have access to a monitor connected to the online Freddy Fazbear Pizza Maker, an online service where we remotely control a robot to make a pizza that just so happens to lure Chica away from us. That's way too convenient in my eyes. There is no way that we just so happen to run into this office, the one that has access to this despite Freddy being disconnected for the main server for whatever reason. This computer is connected to it. I mean, I don't know how this is possible. This is way too lucky for this to just be luck. Oh well, okay? I mean, maybe it's not so lucky. The first time I tried this minigame, I got stuck in the tomato sauce machine, and I made some very disturbing step animatronic jokes towards Chica because of it. Actually, no, that was pretty funny. In 7, security access. Gregory, throughout his time in this game, steals so many things from the Pizzaplex, not even including all the little like gift boxes you can find around the place. He also steals security badges and ends up getting enough to have level 7 clearance. It's like a 4-year-old or however old he is, okay? Doesn't matter in this case. It's really unclear how old he is or how tall he is because he can't ride the go-kart alone, but he can fit in Freddy's cake cavity, but he can also speak full sentences with proper grammar and knows more words than I do. Like, again, no idea how old he is, but no matter what, how is he able to gain level 7 clearance? How are these so readily available for him to steal? And how is it that taking these badges always triggers some form of event that makes everything worse? How are the security guards supposed to use these badges if this is what happens every time they take it? Or you know what, an even better question, how are these security badges just laying around in like really special containers when the security should just have them on their belt with their normal clearance level, okay? Because getting multiple level 1 passes doesn't end up at adding up to a maximum of level 8 clearance. That's still level 1. It's just a lot of level 1. Okay, I don't get it. It makes no sense. It's stupid. And it's sick paint cans. After starting the game and getting to the free roam section where you have the tutorial for distracting animatronics, I just want to mention how goddamn lucky that is, okay? One of the animatronics you're going to need to avoid, no matter how damn fine she is and how alluring she is, you still need to avoid her, is literally right there in front of you blocking your path. Yet, somehow, there is also a stack of paint cans randomly on in the middle of a random cart in the hall in front of you. Okay, why? That cart is also just for some reason blocking the hall that I'm sure multiple employees love having to walk around. But you know what? That's fine. It's fine that it's blocking the way because you can knock over the convenient and empty paint cans that are on top of it just so that Chica can come and investigate it. I don't, what? She's right next to the door that she ends up using to investigate it, so it's not like she's being inconvenient by taking that way. But still, and I get that it's for tutorial's sake, so oh yeah, this is how you do it, but in the context of their world, that's super lucky. Suspiciously lucky. How about doing a number 5, Glitched Freddy? Alright, hear me out. It seems highly convenient that we just so happen to be at the show where Freddy glitches out, and that seemingly, as we're led to believe, this glitch is what causes him to refuse the Afton virus code thing. What? How? We're supposed to believe that this glitch, or this error is caused by Gregory, given the security threat message that pops up next to the silhouette of a child when we're actually watching it from Freddy's perspective. But if that is true and we caused the glitch, how is a kid in a group full of kids a security threat when people are allowed to be in the Pizzaplex at this time? Sure, he didn't have a guest profile or whatever, but if Gregory was the glitch, wouldn't Freddy have glitched again after scanning us when we start the game? Honestly, I think that the hardest part to believe about this, strangely enough, is the fact that we were able to climb inside of Freddy while he was glitching out on stage without anyone noticing. Sure, maybe he wasn't on stage when we ended up climbing in, but a glitched animatronic is surely going to have some form of personnel around them so that they can get fixed up, especially when he is the headliner and it happened during a show. No way that he didn't go through parts and service before we actually end up meeting him in the first moments of the game. That's some strange, god level luck right there, okay? Is that really what happened? Jeez, that's some Talos level luck right there. Oh, praise mighty Talos. In it for Phaser Blaster. Okay, is it just me, or is a place like the Pizzaplex giving away a golden version of their laser gun totally far-fetched? Because that's the story that we're supposed to be believing when we get the blaster after winning. That winning this game was essential because it was the only way to obtain the prize of the Phaser Blaster that you can then run around and shoot people with. And when you do shoot those people, they will have a reaction no matter where you shoot them, as seen in the What If You Shoot Vanessa video here on YouTube. Which essentially means that this thing is a laser beam taser, okay? And I don't think that I should have to explain why that's a bad idea. So, why is not only this place giving away a laser taser, but also one that when shot disables your main feature animatronics? That seems like just literally the worst idea that you could think of. Almost as if they've never learned. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Moondrop. While there are plenty of times that Gregory could have been made in this game, particularly when Freddy gets grabbed by the Moondrop animatronic right outside of parts and service, that should have been it. You're trying to tell me that the daycare attendant, the dude who really wants to get us, told Vanessa that Freddy was in parts and service in the room or whatever, but didn't mention that we were in the recharge station that was right next to it? I mean, he knew we were there. He waved at us while taking Freddy away. What? Then, when she talks to Freddy, she's talking as if she doesn't know that we're listening in. It's almost like they put on a show. Sure, the daycare attendant isn't able to get us if we're in a recharge station, but we clearly aren't invisible to him because he literally waves at us. So why wouldn't he inform Vanessa about this while mentioning Freddy? And if he did, why not bring that up when talking to Freddy instead of just asking him if he's helping us? It doesn't make sense. The daycare attendant not ratting on us is definitely a lucky moment, but I guess, I don't know, maybe he knows that snitches get stitches, or maybe since Moondrop is such a damn creeper, he wanted to save us for himself. Oh god. But ultimately, into number 2, Destruction. Isn't it convenient that there is a way to break every animatronic that isn't Freddy that leaves the animatronic broken in such a way that you can remove whatever aspect that you need to upgrade Freddy? Hell yeah it is. Like, it's so lucky that there is somehow a way to break each of these animatronics in like the perfect amount for the animatronics as well. There's no more and there's no less. We don't have to use the same thing twice. And it works the first time. Even like with Chica, okay? We push her into a trash compactor because she isn't actually crawling in, and then somehow we don't get crushed despite her grabbing onto us and trying to pull us with her. We only get pulled into another area of this mallplex thing that we can then get back to the main pizzaplex through, instead of just being pulled into the trash compactor and having our heads explode. So yeah, needless to say that looking at it logically, it's extremely lucky that there is a way to destroy each of the evil animatronics in a way that allows us to get their specific upgrades, even though we didn't really need to crush the animatronics, and instead could have just chilled in Freddy's room until 6 AM when the doors opened. And finally, in at number 1, canon ending. During the true ending, or the Afton, burn trap ending, whatever the hell you want to call it, everything we experience is so freaking insanely lucky, like beyond even protagonist standards of luck. We have to fend off Burn Trap's attempts to take control over Freddy by setting him on fire using what are most likely the systems that Henry used to set the same building on fire in FNAF 6. I mean, it's incredibly thoughtful of the ground to only give out at the perfect moments that we fall into the room that we need to, with very easy to understand monitors set up connected to cameras in the various rooms that Burn Trap enters, and only those rooms, with buttons that light fires in the rooms that correspond to what the monitor sees. Plus, I mean, like, you really gotta think about it. How are these still working? It's clearly been a while. These cameras and old computers are still working for an unknown amount of years after being set on fire that was enough to ruin the building. Not to mention after falling into a sinkhole that had to open up beneath it. How is this all still working after that? And not only after that, but all of these computer monitors are literal dinosaurs. Like, if you go into an abandoned school library, this is what you will see. How did they work before the fire, let alone after? Okay, my parents have a monitor like this and it doesn't work, and I'm certain we took better care of it than a decrepit pizza brand that's been set on fire multiple times. So I don't know how this happened.